For 16 cycles, I instructed at a combat academy, believing I comprehended the essence of strength. Yet, a single human silence transformed the entire institution. Indeed, I have dedicated 16 cycles to teaching at the Valoran Prime Combat Academy. And allow me to elaborate on tradition. It upholds order, it maintains standards, and yes, before you become overly sentimental, sometimes tradition involves allowing new recruits to endure some rough treatment. This is how we distinguish true warriors from those who merely consume oxygen. So, when the Galactic Council, in their boundless wisdom, decided to admit humans to our academy, we naturally assumed the initiation process would resolve itself within a week, 2 weeks at most. These delicate, pliable creatures from Earth, please. They appeared so fragile, as if a mere sneeze in their direction would cause them to bruise. The dominant Krathan warriors observed the incoming human class and practically began to salivate. Fresh recruits, easy targets, and we, the instructors, simply did what we always did. We averted our gaze and permitted natural selection to run its course. The Academy operates on a fundamental tenet, the survival of the fittest. At the pinnacle of this hierarchy were the Krathan. 7 feet of scaly muscle, 4 arms capable of bending steel, and a cultural fixation on dominance that makes them exceptionally entertaining at gatherings. Their pack leader, a particularly unpleasant individual named Voresh, governed the trainee barracks as his private domain. His horns were sharpened to acute points, scars crisscrossed his face like trophies, and his voice resembled gravel being pulverized in a metal grinder. He possessed that particular gleam in his eyes, you know the one, the look that suggests he enjoys inflicting pain a little too much. The pecking order was unmistakable. Krathian at the top, naturally. Then the Thoraxians, insectoid warriors with exoskeletons sufficiently thick to withstand most impacts. Below them, the Sulfan, an aquatic species with surprising tentacular strength. The Dravik fire-breathers occupied the middle ground, and at the very bottom, gasping for air and dignity, were whoever was unfortunate enough to be deemed the weakest that cycle. Then came the humans. Now, the system functioned as follows. Senior trainees could challenge junior ones to combat drills, a practice fully sanctioned by Academy regulations. Of course, for educational purposes and all that bureaucratic jargon. What the regulations did not specify was the force one could apply, the duration of the drill, or what transpired when 5 Krathan decided to engage one human simultaneously in a drill. We instructors observed from our elevated platforms. Occasionally, we took notes. Primarily, we merely sipped our stimulant beverages and reminded ourselves that warriors are forged in adversity, not nurtured in comfort. Voresh possessed a particular knack for exploiting loopholes, accidental collisions in corridors, equipment malfunctions during sparring, training exercises that invariably left the humans limping to the medical bay. And the beauty of it all was that it was technically within regulations. The Krathan were not unintelligent, merely cruel. There is a distinction. The other species observed and quickly learned. If one wished to avoid becoming a target, one either joined in or became inconspicuous. Most chose invisibility. A few opted to participate, reasoning that it was preferable to deliver blows than to receive them. And the humans? They endured it day after day, week after week. They rose, they appeared, they were knocked down, and they returned for more. Foolish, we thought. Admirably persistent, perhaps, but ultimately foolish. We had no inkling of what was to come. Jackson Reed was precisely the kind of human one would expect to fail by the 3rd week. A slender build, perhaps 6 feet tall, which rendered him short by academy standards. Brown hair, meticulously kept according to military regulations, likely in hopes of blending in. It did not. Green eyes that, upon his arrival, still held a trace of optimism, which was, frankly, rather pathetic. The galaxy devours optimism for breakfast. He made an effort, I will grant him that, arriving early to every training session, studying the combat modules until his eyes were bloodshot, practicing defensive forms in the deserted gymnasium when he believed no one was observing. A sweet child. Doomed, but sweet. Voresh spotted him on the second day. Of course he did. Predators invariably identify the weakest prey first. It is basic biology. And Jackson, bless his fragile human heart, committed the fatal error of making eye contact. In Krathan culture, that signifies a challenge. In human culture, apparently, it is merely a polite acknowledgement. Cultural differences are amusing until someone requires hospitalization. The initial beating occurred during hand-to-hand combat drills. Voresh volunteered to demonstrate a grappling technique. Jackson ended up with 3 fractured ribs and a concussion that caused him to see double for 2 days. Accidental excessive force, Voresh claimed. The medical staff patched Jackson up, documented the incident, and returned him to training. The second beating took place on the obstacle course. A Krathan foot just happened to trip Jackson as he ran past. He fell 15 feet onto concrete plating. A dislocated shoulder, a fractured wrist. An unfortunate training accident, the report stated. By the 4th week, Jackson was covered in bruises that bloomed across his skin like some grotesque flower garden, purple, yellow, green, black. His left eye remained perpetually swollen. He walked with a limp that he attempted to conceal but could not quite manage. The other humans observed with a particular expression in their eyes. Angry, certainly, but also calculating, awaiting something. We instructors noticed, but assumed they were simply waiting for Jackson to withdraw. Humans are pack animals, after all. Once the weakest departed, the abuse would redistribute. Standard social dynamics. We were profoundly mistaken about what they were anticipating. It happened during weapons qualification training. Jackson was performing the plasma rifle assembly drill, his fingers meticulously navigating the sequence we had ingrained into every trainee 1,000 times. Disassemble, clean, reassemble, safety check. Basic competency that even a Dravik hatchling could manage. Voresh and 4 of his Krathan cohorts surrounded Jackson's station. This was not unusual. They did this every few days, like sharks circling something bleeding in the water. What was unusual was the expression on Voresh's face. He was no longer playing games. "Human," Voresh rumbled, all 4 arms crossed in that aggressive posture Krathan so favor. "Your technique is sloppy. You require additional instruction." Jackson did not even glance up. A clever boy, finally learning. "My assembly time is within regulation parameters, sir." Oh, that "sir" was beautifully defiant. Technically respectful, yet dripping with quiet resistance. I nearly admired it from my observation post. Nearly felt bad about what was coming next. Nearly. Voresh seized Jackson by the throat with one hand and hoisted him clear off the ground. The plasma rifle clattered to the floor. Jackson's hands reached for Voresh's wrist, attempting to pry those fingers loose, his legs kicking ineffectually in the air. His face began to assume an interesting shade of purple. "When I offer instruction," Voresh said slowly, "you accept gratefully." He flung Jackson across the training hall, and I mean flung him. The boy flew a good 12 feet and crashed into an equipment rack with a sound that made even me wince. Metal and human bones produce very distinct noises when they break, and I heard both. Jackson crumpled to the floor, gasping, likely attempting to identify which parts of him hurt the most. Spoiler alert, all of them. The other Krathan chuckled, making that horrible clicking sound they produce when amused. A few trainees from other species feigned intense concentration on their own drills. The humans, however, 6 of them positioned around the hall, every single one had ceased their activity. They were not looking at Jackson. They were looking at each other, engaging in some form of silent communication with eye contact and subtle head movements. Their hands had become very still. Their breathing had altered. Everything about their body language conveyed coiled springs on the verge of release. Varesh strode towards Jackson, who was attempting to push himself upright with violently trembling arms. Blood dripped from somewhere on Jackson's head, spattering onto the floor in a rhythm that was almost musical. Drops of human fragility creating percussion on academy tiles. "Get up," Varesh commanded. "We are not finished with your lesson." Jackson rose to his hands and knees, swaying. One of the other humans, a sturdy female with dark skin and even darker eyes, took a step forward. Another human, a tall guy with blonde hair, placed a hand on her shoulder. "Stop. Wait." Wait for what? I wondered. For Jackson to be killed? For Varesh to become bored? For a miracle? As it turns out, yes, they were waiting for a miracle. And she entered right on cue. The training hall doors hissed open, slicing through the sound of Varesh's laughter like a knife through flesh. Lieutenant Commander Raina Cross did not merely walk into that room. She entered it with the inevitability and absoluteness of gravity entering a conversation. Every head turned, every conversation died. Even Varesh paused mid-gloat to ascertain what had so dramatically altered the atmospheric pressure. She was not physically imposing by Krathan standards, perhaps 5 feet 9 inches, an athletic build, dark hair pulled back in a regulation braid, wearing standard-issue human military fatigues with insignia that made my secondary stomach drop when I recognized them. Terra's Special Operations Command, 3 combat service medals, the Silver Star. That meant she had accomplished something so classified that even the commendation was redacted. Oh no, I knew who she was. Every instructor knew who she was. The Galactic Council had circulated her file when they announced the Human Integration Program. Lieutenant Commander Raina Cross, a distinguished veteran from the Outer Rim pacification campaigns, with 15 verified hostile engagements and not a single loss under her command, specialized in what humans charmingly refer to as close-quarters combat, a polite descriptor for her ability to neutralize threats with her bare hands when ammunition was scarce. Her presence here was entirely unexpected. She was meant to be 3 systems away, engaged in liaison duties with the Vatoran Fleet Command. Her appearance at this academy, specifically in this training hall, at this very moment, struck me as the universe's subtle hint that my professional life was about to become significantly more complex. The humans in the room immediately snapped to attention, their movements precise and sharp, as if an electrical surge had coursed through them. The compact female stood straight. The fair-haired man straightened his shoulders. Even Jackson, prostrate and wounded on the floor, attempted to sit up more erectly. Raina's gaze swept the room once, a single, encompassing glance, evaluating the scene with the calm discernment of a predator assessing potential food or rivals. Her eyes paused on Jackson for precisely 2 seconds, then shifted to Varesh, then to his 4 companions, before ascending to the observation platform where my attention suddenly became engrossed in my datapad. She uttered no words, Nor did she need to. The ambient temperature in the room perceptibly dropped by 10 degrees, and I can attest, by my ancestors' scales, that it had nothing whatsoever to do with the ventilation system. Raina Cross remained in the doorway for a full 5 seconds in silence, merely observing, breathing, existing in a manner that made everyone acutely aware of their own finite existence. Here is a truth not imparted during instructor training. Every species in the galaxy has its predators. We all evolved either fleeing from something, pursuing something, or learning to remain perfectly still, hoping the creature with teeth would overlook us. That primordial recognition, that deep-seated reptilian understanding of peril, transcends species boundaries. It is a universal tongue, etched into our very survival instincts. Voresh was now confronting a predator. The precise moment of his realization was discernible. His forearms slowly uncrossed, his weight subtly shifted backward. The aggressive, forward-leaning posture he perpetually adopted, that dominant stance proclaiming, "I command this space and everything within it," dissolved as if ice beneath a thermal lance. His 3 companions, the Krathen, who had been laughing and posturing merely 30 seconds prior, suddenly discovered reasons to inspect their equipment. One actually took a step back. Another became intently fascinated by the ceiling panels. Raina still had not spoken. She simply continued to fix Voresh with a gaze that was flat, icy, and utterly devoid of anything resembling compassion. Human eyes are peculiar, you know. The prominent white sclera surrounding the iris makes it effortless to discern precisely where a human is looking. Prey species developed this trait to coordinate group defenses. Predator species evolved it to coordinate pack hunts. One could easily infer which category was on full display at that moment. She inclined her head subtly to the left, a slight movement, perhaps 5 degrees. Voresh actually recoiled. A 7-foot-tall, 4-armed warrior who had been tossing humans around like playthings 5 minutes earlier, flinched at a mere head tilt. The silence protracted. Someone's equipment hummed. Someone else's breathing was excessively loud. Jackson remained on the floor, bleeding, observing the scene with a mixture of relief and gratification. The other humans had not moved, but their body language had completely transformed. They were no longer coiled springs. They were an audience, engrossed in their favorite performance. Voresh yielded first. Of course he did. He stated that this was a sanctioned training exercise, and the defensive undertone in his voice was a beautiful sound to hear. A regulation combat drill, he insisted. The human, he claimed, was learning appropriate defensive techniques. Raina's eyebrow arched, a solitary brow, perhaps half an inch. Voresh, this time, took a full step backward. She then began to walk, slow, deliberate steps across the training hall floor. Her boots made soft, rhythmic sounds on the tiles. Tap, 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 like a countdown to an inevitable event. She passed Voresh, close enough that he could have reached out and seized her with any of his forearms. He did not, could not, would not. She approached Jackson and knelt beside him. She did not touch him, merely observed, assessing the damage with professional efficiency. Broken ribs, likely a concussion, definitely lacerations and contusions, the full catalogue of what transpires when a fragile human encounters an irate Krathen. "Can you stand, trainee?" Her voice was quiet, conversational, the sort of tone one might use to discuss lunch options. In this context, it was absolutely terrifying. Jackson nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Then he stood. He swayed. He bled, likely fueled by adrenaline and sheer stubborn human pride. But he stood. Raina rose with him, turned, and again faced Voresh, with Jackson positioned slightly behind her. That flat, empty gaze was back in full force. "We need to have a conversation," she began, still quiet, still conversational, still utterly terrifying. "About how we define the word drill." I began updating my resume right then. This was going to become unpleasant. Voresh made an effort to regroup. Credit where it's due, the idiot possessed courage. Suicidal, foolish courage, but courage nonetheless. "I do not answer to human officers," he declared, drawing himself up to his full height. "This is a galactic academy. Your rank means nothing here." Raina smiled. It wasn't a joyful smile. It was the kind of smile that sharks likely invented first, and humans simply adopted for special occasions. "You are absolutely correct, trainee Voresh," she said, her voice still smooth as honey and utterly devoid of warmth. "I have no authority over you in this training environment. I am merely an observer. So, allow me to observe aloud, and you can point out what I am misinterpreting." She began to pace in a slow circle around him, hands clasped behind her back, her posture relaxed, like a professor preparing a lecture. "I observe one trainee significantly larger and stronger than another trainee. I observe that trainee using what you call a drill to inflict damage that will necessitate medical intervention. I observe 4 additional trainees supporting this action. I observe training staff." She glanced up at our observation platform, and I felt my spine turn to jelly. "Observing without intervention." Varesh's jaw tightened. "That is how warriors are forged. The weak are culled. The strong survive. This is tradition." "Tradition," Raina repeated, as if tasting the word and finding it acrid. "Let me tell you about human tradition, Voresh. When someone in our unit gets hurt, we do not stand around watching. We do not call it education. We do not let it continue because it builds character." She stopped pacing, faced him directly, and took one step closer, invading his personal space. He was still taller, still larger, still possessed twice as many arms. None of that appeared to matter. "When someone harms our people," she continued, her voice dropping even lower, "we have a different tradition. We identify the threat, we assess the appropriate response, and then we remove the threat permanently." The word permanently hung in the air like a guillotine blade. "Are you threatening me?" Varesh attempted to sound outraged. It emerged as uncertain. "Threatening?" Raina looked genuinely perplexed. "No, trainee. I am educating you. You believe in education through physical demonstration, correct? You believe the body learns what the mind cannot grasp. I am simply explaining that humans subscribe to that same philosophy." She leaned in closer. Voresh recoiled. "The difference is, when we impart a lesson, we ensure it only needs to be taught once. Repetition is inefficient. We prefer permanent behavioral modification." From the observation deck, I could see Instructor Val, a Thoraxian with 16 years of experience, physically squirming in his seat. Instructor Kelnak had his hand covering his face. This was a catastrophe. A beautiful, terrifying catastrophe. Raina stepped back, her smile returning, professional courtesy sliding back into place like armor. "But of course, you are correct. I have no authority here. I am simply here to check on the human integration program, ensuring our trainees are adapting well to academy culture." Her eyes flicked to Jackson, still standing despite looking as if he'd been processed through a waste compactor. "They seem to be adapting beautifully, learning all sorts of valuable lessons about tradition and hierarchy." She looked back at Voresh. I trust there will be no more educational opportunities today? It was phrased as a question. It was not a question. No, ma'am, Varesh said quietly. Outstanding, Rayna said brightly. Carry on, then. Varesh departed the training hall 30 seconds later. He did not swagger, nor did he strut, nor did he perform the dominant chest-puffing display Kratan exhibit when they wish to signal their triumph in an interaction. He simply left. His 4 companions dispersed like debris during a decompression event, suddenly recalling urgent engagements literally anywhere else. The compact human female, her name tag indicating Torres, immediately moved to Jackson's side, commencing an examination of his injuries with practiced efficiency. Field medic training, most likely. The fair-haired man, Hansen according to his uniform, was already on his communication device, summoning proper medical assistance. The other species within the training hall had fallen utterly silent. A Thoraxian trainee stared at Rayna as if she had suddenly manifested wings and begun to breathe plasma. 2 Dravik were engaged in a whispered conversation, accompanied by considerable nervous tail twitching. The Sulfan in the corner had turned pale, which, for an aquatic species, means their skin transitioned from blue to nearly transparent. A fascinating stress response, utterly irrelevant to the imminent implosion of my career. Up on the observation platform, Instructor Val was the first to speak. "We need to file an incident report," he said, his voice taut. "Regarding what precisely?" inquired Instructor Kelnak. A visiting officer had reviewed trainee well-being and discussed training standards. No tangible issues arose. "She allegedly threatened a trainee," V insisted. "Did she?" I heard myself question. I detected no threats. I perceived a philosophical discourse on educational methodology, which was quite illuminating. I absorbed a great deal. We all recognized my fabrication. We all acknowledged its irrelevance. Rayna Cross had just fundamentally reshaped the Academy's power structure without resorting to physical contact, without submitting a single formal complaint, without providing us with any concrete grounds for disciplinary action. It was meticulously executed, brilliant, and utterly terrifying. For here is what we all grasped. Humans do not accept hierarchical orders in the manner that other species do. They do not await individuals growing strong enough to ascend the ranks. They do not believe in proving oneself through isolated combat. Humans are communal hunters. If one human is harmed, the group responds. And their response is not to strengthen the victim, but to completely and permanently neutralize the threat with extreme efficiency. Voorkes had spent weeks asserting dominance over Jackson, cultivating his reputation, ensuring every trainee understood the pecking order. In 5 minutes, Ray had reduced him to a cautionary tale. And she accomplished this without throwing a single punch, without raising her voice, without violating a single regulation. On the training floor below, medical personnel arrived and began transferring Jackson onto a transport stretcher. Rhea walked alongside him, still conversing softly, her hand on his shoulder, reassuring and protective. The other humans had arrayed themselves around them, not conspicuously, not aggressively, but positioned in such a way that anyone wishing to approach Jackson would first need to pass through all of them. Pack behavior. We had not assimilated humans into the Academy. We had introduced wolves into the sheepfold and labeled them sheep because they walked bipedally. Rayna Cross remained for 8 days. She did not issue a grand announcement about it. She did not file paperwork explaining her extended presence. She merely appeared at training sessions. She sat in the observation deck with us instructors, took notes on her datapad, and displayed that unnerving smile whenever anyone inquired about the duration of her stay. The impact was immediate and absolute. Buraish ceased attending group training, citing an injury, which was amusing given he hadn't been touched. His medical report indicated severe muscle strain. The doctor, a Vitorian with no sense of humor, had seemingly documented it with a perfectly straight face. We all understood what severe muscle strain was code for: fear-induced voluntary isolation. His 4 CFN companions suddenly transformed into exemplary trainees, polite, focused, keeping their forearms to themselves. One of them actually apologized to a drake he had shoved last week. Apologized? A creen. I nearly choked on my stimulant beverage. The other species recalibrated faster than navigation computers. The Thoraxians, who had been participating in the harassment with enthusiasm, now went out of their way to partner with humans during drills. The Sulfans began sharing equipment unsolicited. Even the Dravik, naturally proud and territorial, started treating the human section of the barracks with cautious respect. Jackson recuperated in the medical bay for 3 days, then returned to training with his ribs bandaged and his eyes still swollen shut. Rhea observed his first session back with the intensity of a targeting computer. No one approached within 5 feet of him unless they were offering assistance. But here's the detail that truly resonated with me. The humans had not become arrogant. They had not started exerting their influence or demanding preferential treatment. They simply continued training, assisting each other, operating as this cohesive unit that moved, thought, and reacted like a single organism. Torres conducted additional conditioning drills with Jackson every evening, rebuilding his strength. Hansen shared his advanced combat notes with 3 other humans who were struggling with crayon grappling techniques. A quiet human named Chun, whom I had barely noticed before, revealed himself to be a tactical genius and began leading strategy sessions for the entire human group. They were not attempting to dominate the hierarchy, they were entirely disregarding it. They were constructing their own structure parallel to the Academy's established order, and the terrifying aspect was that it was proving more effective. I observed a mixed species training exercise on day 6. Humans, Duraxians, and Dravik collaborated on a tactical scenario. The humans naturally assumed leadership roles, not because they demanded it, but because everyone else simply started seeking their direction. Rena watched too, made a note on her datapad, and displayed that small, contented smile. She knew precisely what she had accomplished. We were beginning to comprehend it. On day 9, Rena departed. On day 10, the Galactic Council investigation team arrived. Amusing how the timing coincided. 6 council representatives, 3 from species I had never encountered before, carrying datapads and recording equipment, and expressions that suggested our careers were on the verge of obsolescence. They established themselves in the Academy's administrative center and commenced calling instructors for interviews. Instructor Valve went first, emerging 2 hours later, looking as though he had aged a decade. Instructor Kelnak went second, appearing pale and trembling. When my turn came, I sat opposite a Zenthari adjudicator whose compound eyes perceived everything and whose mandibles clicked with disapproval at every answer I provided. You observed trainee Reed being assaulted 17 times over 4 weeks, the adjudicator stated, reading from his datapad. You filed 0 intervention reports. It was within training parameters, I responded weakly. Training parameters do not encompass fractured bones, concussions, and a documented pattern of targeted harassment. Click, 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 went the mandibles. Lieutenant Commander Cross has provided extensive testimony, video evidence, medical records, and witness statements from 43 trainees across 7 species. Of course she had. Of course she had spent those 8 days diligently building an airtight case, while smiling, taking notes, and making us believe she was merely observing. Humans are formidable. 3 instructors were dismissed that week: Volt, Kelnak, and a Dravik named Sarah, who had apparently been running a betting pool on how long humans would endure. 5 more, including myself, received formal reprimands and mandatory retraining on harassment prevention protocols. Boresh was expelled, not specifically for assaulting Jackson, but for violating the honor code, conduct unbecoming, and approximately 15 other regulations that the council suddenly remembered existed. His 3 friends received suspensions and probationary status. The entire academy culture underwent an overnight transformation. New policies, new oversight, a new understanding that hazing was not tradition, but a liability. I retained my position by the narrowest possible margin. I spent my nights reviewing the case files, watching the surveillance footage that Rayna had somehow accessed and compiled. For the first time, I clearly saw what we had been calling education. We had completely underestimated humans, thinking they were weak because of their size, fragile because they bruised easily, and easy prey because they did not immediately retaliate. We overlooked the fact that Earth's most dangerous predators do not hunt alone. They plan, they coordinate, they await the precise moment. Then, they strike with absolute precision. So here I am, with 16 cycles of teaching experience, now conducting sensitivity training for incoming instructors, teaching them what I learned the hard way. Humans are not like us. They do not appear dangerous. That is precisely the point. They evolved on a perilous world where everything larger sought to consume them. Therefore, they learned to employ cunning in their violence, to organize, strategize, and wait until the predator was inattentive before striking back with stones, fire, and an utterly unreasonable level of creativity. Jackson, by the way, graduated in the top 15% of his class, specializing in tactical command. The last I heard, he was serving on a galactic peacekeeping vessel, second in command under, you guessed it, Lieutenant Commander Rayna Cross. Humans continue to enroll in the academy thereafter, more each cycle. They still experience setbacks at times, still endure hardships, still appear delicate compared to Krathens and Thoraxians. But now, everyone remembers what occurred when we mistook patience for weakness. The galaxy is teeming with species stronger than humans, faster than humans, and better armed than humans. But I have yet to encounter one that is more dangerous. And that, my colleagues, is why you should pay attention when a human smiles and says nothing. That silence indicates they are calculating. Stories like these are not truly about extraterrestrials or militaries. They are about what unfolds in everyday life when people confuse patience with vulnerability. Most humans do not immediately fight back. They observe, they absorb, and they evolve.